So I'm excited to be here today at Downsize Fox Cities. As Cindy told you, we are going to be talking about planning, or as you saw on the invite, your planning. And I promise it will be very interactive as you're comfortable sharing. We are going to do some activities, some exercises, and I will give you some questions to ponder. And then at the end, hopefully you will have an answer to that question. Have I completed my planning? And if you say no to that question, we will also have next steps for you to be taking to figure out what's next. All right, does that sound like a good way to spend your lunch hour? All right, great. So we're going to start with some questions right off the bat. Answer as you're comfortable again. So the first question is, by raising of the hands, how many of you have done your financial planning? Your cash flow, your investments, your insurance? All right, that's a pretty great turnout. How many of you have done your estate planning? Wills, trusts, powers of attorney? Wow, this is a good group. Nice job. Okay, a follow-up question to that. So of the people that have trusts, have you funded your trusts? And do you have an appropriate trustee? Huh? Yeah, quite a few. That's a great comment. Okay, good. And now it's I think so. Okay. Okay. Well, we'll have some questions to help you identify that. All right. So of those of you that said, yes, I have completed my planning, how many of you are confident that it will be a smooth transition or smooth plan when it's needed? Okay, there's a few hands. So of those people that said, well, maybe it's not going to be smooth, what kinds of things do you think would kind of cause it not to be smooth? Maybe a little bumpy. Go ahead. Ah, good question. So with the unknown of the future, how many successor trustees do you need? You know, are you prepared? Do you have enough? That's a great question. We'll look into that in a little bit, okay? What other things could make it bumpy? Family dynamics. Yeah, we're going to learn a little bit about that today because the current planning world, there's some interesting studies that are being shown about what's causing those bumpiness. It's not necessarily your investment. It's not necessarily your planning. You may have great technical stuff, but it could be those family dynamics. What else could cause some bumps in the road? Okay, not having the conversation. Right, right. It's a tough topic, right? Talking about money, talking about the future, talking about death. That's a hard conversation to have. Okay, what else? Are there other things that could cause bumpiness in the road? Well, you guys definitely hit some of the top ones. And we're going to explore some of that in the current financial planning and estate planning world today. So typically when you're doing your planning, you're focused on transferring or positioning your children and grandchildren in a better place, right? You want them happy and healthy. Also, maybe the causes that you want to support. You're preparing for that transition so that you're supporting the causes that you want to support. But I can tell you from research that that's not typically how it goes. Your best intentions, your best planning can get disrupted. So did you know 70% by the end of the second generation? Does anyone know what that statistic is talking about? 70% of the time, by the end of the second generation, families fail to stay united and keep their wealth together. Those bumps in the road happen 70% of the time, and 90% by the end of the third generation. And it's not something recent. There's a quote from 2,000 years ago that says, from China, wealth never survives 3 generations. In England, clogs to clogs in 3 generations. That one should sound familiar. We'll get to ours. Spain, 1st generation trader, 2nd generation gentleman, 3rd generation beggar. Germany is a little bit shorter. Seldom 3 descents continue good. And then ours, has anyone heard of this one? From shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations? No? Okay. Well, new information coming your way. And then Brazil in the 1900s, from the stables to the stars to the stables in 3 generations. Now, what did we learn from all of that? I mean, that's over 2,000 years ago. This was a quote, verses that they had heard. Lessons from history. It doesn't matter. The geography didn't matter. The cultures, the government structures, the tax structures, that all didn't matter. The good news is, believe it or not, it's a human issue. It's not because of your planning, but it's the human issue. And the good news about that is we can change it, right? If we know about it, we're aware of it, we can do something about it if we care enough about it, right? So why do the 90% fail? Why do 90% of families fail to stay together and keep their wealth together for more than 3 generations? I can tell you it's not due to lack of traditional and financial planning. There's a ton of people that do the good financial work, but they're focused on transferring assets instead of wealth. Now, what do I mean by that? We're going to go through a couple studies here, just 2, and it'll kind of highlight what the difference is, all right? The first study here is a study that was done by the Family Office Exchange in 2009. So remember, 2008 was that, meltdown, right? So they polled their, can everyone see that? Okay, great. So they polled their families and said, okay, what in 2009 is the most critical thing facing your family? And by the studies, about 79%, if you add all of those up, are focused on financial problems or investments or poor planning. And only 7% thought it would be family dynamics or family relationships. On the flip side, a study was done by the Williams Group. They studied 3,250 families and asked them, these families had wealth a generation ago and lost it. And they asked them, what got you? Like, what caused that loss of family connection, family wealth? And what they reported was 60% of the time it was due to lack of communication and trust in the family. So having those conversations, family dynamics. 25% was unprepared heirs. So the generations before didn't adequately prepare the generations that followed. And 12% was due to failure to establish that common purpose. It says family mission up there, but what I like to say is that common purpose for the family. That's a big difference, right? What they thought would get them was all about the finances and the planning and the investments, when in reality, these families experienced it was lack of communication and trust, lack of mentoring and preparing heirs, and lack of a common purpose. So what kind of planning works with that? We'll get back to that in a second. All right, so the next study that we're going to look at, what is known versus what is done. So here's a study from Allianz. Allianz is a life insurance company, and they did a study of inheritance. So they asked baby boomers and the generation above, which we'll call elders, what is the most important inheritance you could pass or receive? So baby boomers and the elders are answering. What is that most important inheritance you could pass or receive? The family stories and life lessons was the answer. 86% of both baby boomers and their parents said the most important inheritance I could receive, family stories and life lessons, the values that made us who we are today. And here's a kicker. For baby boomers, it was 10 times more important for them to receive the family story, life lessons, the values, than financial assets or real estate. That's kind of big, right? 10 times more important. Now, when I've done this workshop many, many years, I've always been asked, so is that the same though for the future generations? So like, what about Gen Xers or Gen Z or Gen Y or millennials? You know, do they really feel the same? And from my experiences over the years, I've been able to answer, I believe so, because I've been hired by Generation 2, so Gen Xers, my age, and younger, to record the family story and life lessons for their parents. So it was a gift of guided discovery for the 50th wedding anniversary, or the birthday, or Father's Day, or Mother's Day. So I truly believed, definitely, that we would find the same statistics here, that Gen X, Gen Y, the millennials would say, yes, family story, life lessons are the most important thing you can give or receive. Now, I'm happy to report just this year, Wells Fargo private bank did a study, and they asked over 1,000 Gen Z and millennials, you know, what's the most important inheritance you could receive? And 9 out of 10 of them said, family stories, life lessons, more important than any money you could give me. That's pretty powerful stuff. Could be. That's a great follow-up question. Yeah, it wasn't one that was asked, but that's a great question. Yeah. Now, I have a daughter. I don't know if you guys read my bio, but I have a daughter. She's 17, so she's a Gen Z. So here's a picture of how she's catching my passion and my loyalty. I have a love for the Green Bay Packers, which I got from my dad. And she knows my story of how I got to earn the right to enter and see a game at legendary Lambeau Field. By the age of 12, I knew every Packer player, their number, their name, and their position. All 53, not just the ones that played. That was my requirement in order to take up a seat at Lambeau Field with my dad. My dad was a big Packer lover. My grandpa actually played amateur ball with Johnny Blood. So, I mean, it's in my blood. But this is just little things that help my daughter to catch my values of passion and loyalty, and of course, love for the Green Bay Packers. All right, so back to what is known and what is done, the difference. So if we know that the family stories and life lessons are the most important inheritance you could give or receive, what are we doing about it currently? Well, right now, your financial planning, your estate planning, you're focused on growing and protecting and passing those assets, right? The money. But what about the non-financial assets? Now, I can tell you there's 5 times more likely a fight over those personal possessions than the distribution of the finances. 5 times more fighting about those personal possessions. Now, a couple things I wore today intentionally. I have a necklace on, and the pendant is actually my mom's original wedding ring. And she had it made into a pendant. And first she had it made into a mother's ring. So it's my sister, my brother, and my birthstones, thank you. And then she had it made into a pendant, and she got a new wedding ring. Sorry. And last year for Christmas, she gave me this pendant, And for her, it stands for 3 generations. It's actually my birthstone, her birthstone, and my daughter's birthstone. It just happened to work out that way. But this is one of my things I value most. No, it's not a ton of dollars, but it's the meaning that comes with me. So thinking about those non-financial assets, what kind of planning works that in there? Is it in your estate planning? Is it in your financial planning? I'll give you some tips on what to do next. All right, so our first activity. So everyone should have a packet of papers in front of you. And the third sheet, I think, should say what matters on it. I want you to grab that one. Does everyone have, oh, you don't have paper there. You see, I have some for you. Here's your what matters. Oh, there you go. You're welcome. Does everyone else have one? Yeah, okay, great. All right, so what I want you to do is take a minute to think of what are the most important things in your life? What matters to you? Now, it doesn't have to be in priority order. You don't have to think of, what's the first one and all of that. But just write down 5 to 7 things that are important to you, that matter most to you. Oh, let me give you your sheets. So just take a few minutes. Just think about it. What matters most to you? You're welcome. And then just put your pen down when you're finished. I want to give you enough time. All right, we'll give you 30 more seconds to wrap up. So in the past, when I've asked this question, these are some of the things that have come up. over the years. And money sometimes is on there, but it's not at the top. It's usually towards the bottom. But what you see typically is family, health, faith, values, reputation. So if those are the things that are important, what kind of planning helps you with that? How do we make sure what matters most to us is passed on to the generations that follow? Well, remember we talked about 90% of the time, families failed to keep their families and wealth together for more than 3 generations. If we're focused on helping keep what matters most kind of part of the tradition of the family, do you think that maybe could increase and help the families stay together if we're focused on family and health and relationships, experiences? So the Heritage Institute is based in Ohio today, originally started in Portland, Oregon. And they had heard of these studies and had seen what was happening in the world. And 90% failed to stay together into the 3rd generation. So they started studying, what did the 10% do differently? What are those things that the 10% intentionally did? And they found that in addition to good financial and estate planning, so really important to focus on making sure those things are in place, the families had a 3rd element of planning called legacy planning or heritage design, where it was focused on the family and preparing the family for what was next. And the difference between heritage design and legacy planning and traditional planning is that it's passing who you are in addition to what you own. So it's really important to have good financial and estate planning, absolutely. But having the meaning behind the money is that critical element that was missing in the 90%. The goal of heritage design or legacy planning is really to help families beat that 90% rule. Stay together and thrive for multiple generations, celebrating what is most special and most important about the family and what matters most. All right, so here's just a snapshot. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this at all, but it's just showing a proven process that has helped families to stay together for years. And I'm just going to kind of go through step by step, but just to show you that these intentional traditions can be done by anyone. This is just the process that we've been using over the years. So an alignment conversation. Alignment conversation is really just with the family champions to help them determine what they want for their family now and in the future. So what are their desired outcomes? What is that compelling future that you want for your family? Is it being happy and healthy? Is it staying connected? Is it making sure, you always have dogs in the family? I mean, there are many different things that families are passionate about. So what is it for the family champions? Next thing you see here is called a FAD, which is a family alignment day or similar, which is just an intentional family meeting where it's facilitated to allow the entire family to provide input in a safe environment, to really talk about what matters most. What's the purpose of our family? What are things that we want to do together to continue to, what I say is promote our values externally and internally? Guided discovery and heritage statement, the 2 bottom circles there, kind of go together. Guided discovery is what I had talked about earlier with the gift that Generation 2 was giving to mom and dad for either their birthdays or anniversaries. It's an interview that allows an individual to share what matters most to them. Tell the family stories, document them. It's usually audio recorded or video recorded, and then it's transcribed to help create the written document, which is called the heritage statement. And the heritage statement, the family heritage statement, has more chapters than just the family champion story. Every generation after it adds their own chapter because the family continues to evolve, right? And there's more to the story than just the first generation. It continues. So guided discovery and heritage statement go together. Then you see the yellow circle over there, collaborative team members. What that means is other professionals come in to help you achieve your desired outcome. So for example, for the heritage statement, I typically bring in a professional writer to help me write that heritage statement so that it is powerful and professional and compelling and inspiring. Those aren't my skills. I can try, but they're not my skills. Other collaborative team members could include your financial advisor, your estate planning attorney, because sometimes what you share here could have a major, and I shouldn't say could. In my experience, 95% of the time, it does affect your planning because here you're talking about what matters most. You're able to kind of think about what you envision for your family's future. It helps you kind of brainstorm or dream, if you will, but really looking at what could be. So the collaborative team members could include those. Could include many other people as well, but it's always whoever can help you focus on your desired outcomes. The initial heritage day up there is really the continuation of family meetings. So helping you to share with generation 2, generation 3, your heritage statement, what matters most to you, and then what are those projects that you guys can do together to continue to promote those values? What can you learn together? How can you grow together? The education needed to prepare the heirs. Because remember back in that study, 25% of the time it was unprepared heirs that caused the break, right? So it's just intentionally having those developmental education opportunities where you can grow together as a family and everyone can become the best version of themselves. Now, does it go smooth the first time? That first family alignment day? It's something new, right? Typically, if you haven't had family meetings in the past, it might be a little bumpy, but I'd say persevere and continue to work with what's working. Then the last circle up there says ongoing heritage days. That's just really continuing the tradition of the family meetings, focusing on, and the blue items up there are just kind of topics or themes that families have used. It says listening, empathy, family leadership, personal and family development, so learning more about yourself so that you can learn how you interact in the family, and then teamwork. So all those themes are really elements of having a high-performing team or a great family that thrives together. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, great question. So how do you handle the Cleaver family versus the Brady Bunch where you have a blended family, right? Well, I would say in that alignment conversation with the family champions, I would ask kind of what their desired outcome is. I mean, what are they shooting for? Do they want, and I've worked with a family where they actually, the family champion said, well, I want to align our individual families first. So mom and her 3 kids and then dad and his 2 kids, they wanted to be on the same page. So they had their initial meetings separately and then they came together, which made it a lot easier because bringing them together once there's alignment. Now granted, there was a lot of discussion and not always on the same page, but it allowed them to have a structure where they're able to communicate better and understand from different viewpoints. So it really depends on what the family champions are looking for. I've done a family meeting where stepmom and 3 daughters and then the husband all came together. And it wasn't a pretty divorce, and the daughters kind of sided on mom's side, right? But this meeting allowed them to share kind of some of those things in a I don't want to say controlled environment, but in a safe environment where there were facilitators that were able to just continue the conversation and not allow it to be so dynamic. And right now they are on their 4th ongoing Heritage Day. They actually have a logo for their team. They're called Team Butler. They have a logo. They have sweatshirts and apparel that has their family logo on it. And the girls were the ones that were so motivated about it and really have become fans of Stepmom. So it you know, it's every situation's different, but it can work. So thank you for the question. Any other questions before I move on? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right, right. So the family alignment day, if the family chooses to get everybody together, is really structured to build, okay? So exactly, I mean, you're right on. Why am I going to share my deepest opinions or thoughts? You know, I don't want to be disinherited. I don't want everyone to hate me kind of thing. But the activities that are before lunch are very like brainstorm, kind of general kind of questions like, what is the purpose of a family? What is the purposes of our family? So it's really kind of able to allow them to just share and be general. The favorite activity, 80% love this activity. It's called the Stratton Interpersonal Leadership Survey. Has anyone heard of that one? So it's a communication and leadership survey, similar to like DISC or what are some other ones? Stratton Interpersonal Leadership Survey. So for short, they call it Stratton ILS. But it's just a leadership survey that's quick, that everyone does in the meeting, but it just highlights different communication and leadership styles in the family. And we do a series, I mean, this is probably the longest exercise that we do in the meeting, but it's really to allow everyone to step back and see, oh, I am not the same as Dad. I'm not the same as Sally. I am not the same as Mom, but I have my own strengths in the leadership style that I own. And it allows, you know, we really structure it to have fun. I shouldn't say make fun, but have fun about the different drastic, thank you, differences in the styles. But it's okay. And it's not a label. It's not like, oh, you're a director, you know. It's allowing you to see that everyone is different, but everyone has strengths. And it takes all 4 quadrants, because it's broken into quadrants, to make a high performance team, to make the family the best it can be. What we like about the Stratton is that it also tells you what you need to do in order to best communicate or lead other styles. So it puts the onus on you. You can't just say, oh, she's a counselor, so she's always going to care too much. You know, no, I need to learn how to work with the counselor that cares too much. So what do I need to do to get the best out of her, kind of thing. So that meeting is really intentionally built to allow deeper conversations in the afternoon. So great question. Yeah, it's reality. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. It can, absolutely. And one of the important parts about the Family Alignment Day is we have pre-calls, okay? So we'll have the alignment conversation with the family champions, the people that want to have the meeting, but then we will have pre-calls with every person that's going to be attending, just to really understand, just one-on-one call, yep. Just to really understand what they would want to get out of it. Are there any hurdles, things that would prevent them from coming? Just to really make sure that it is a right place to start. So that's an important part. And then growth can happen, and allowing everyone to be able to share their own opinions and kind of see things from different perspectives really creates healing, even before those additional conversations happen. So it is a start. It can be. Yep. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, right. Yep. And she's there too. Yes, it can be that. And down the road, it can be 3 generations, 4 generations in one big meeting. But I wouldn't start there, is what you're saying. Yep. Yep. So that's a great comment. Yep. Good questions. Bring them. I'm ready.
No, I think it's real basic. You know, I got a book for my grandkids when we were little for the grandparents to fill out. And I think that right now, I wish I had some of my stuff.
It is
You know,
important.
I don't know that.
And
Right, I know it. That's what I
right.
think. Yeah.
Because one of the the largest response I hear usually when I say, have you shared your stories with your kids? Oh, my kids know my stories. I've told them many times. Well, keep in mind, there's this thing called the telephone game. Has anyone experienced that? The telephone game, right? So you share it with one person, and then the next person shares it, and you go around the room, and by the end, do you have the same story? No, right? So it is so important to have it documented in your own words so that your great grandma or great grandchild can read it, your story, not the version that Sally chooses to share. Right? Did you have a question? Yeah.
So I took started to like
Yep.
conversation.
Mm.
So a lot
Mhm.
of struggle with kids.
Yep, that does happen. But sharing your story, one of the things that is so critical, and some people say, well, I don't want to just talk about myself, they don't care. I can tell you that there are studies that prove by sharing your story and the family story with your children and grandchildren, you are creating more resilient and happier and healthy kids just by sharing your story. They did studies after 9/11 with individuals and saw how resilient they were. They did studies with college students, and the resiliency was measurably different in those that didn't know the family story and those that did. So if you're struggling with, oh, they don't care, it doesn't matter, what I challenge you to think about is, do you want to help raise resilient children and grandchildren? Does that matter to you? Do you want to give them that gift? And I can share a little bit about writing down. It's great to give the gift of the book, but it's really hard to take the time to write it down. So if you, with the gift, maybe once a month, go help them and ask them questions. Sometimes that's the spark that they need to help them write it down, because they probably weren't feeling like, oh, they don't care, that was just a gift. But from your daughters, it seemed like it was a true intent from the heart that they wanted to know, but it just doesn't become a priority. So, yeah, go ahead.
One more week passed on our story. It's 3 years ago. Better patient. Kids sat me and I down, video recorded, about 3 or 4 hours. They had questions like,
Yep.
started when we were young, pets, our birth, and our life, all the way down from beginning to end.
Nice.
About 4 hours recording.
Oh, that's fabulous. That is the greatest gift that you can give
We have
them.
one of those.
Okay. Good. So you've got your planning done, right?
That's a start.
A start. Okay, good for you. Good for you. All right, we're going to continue on. We'll have time for more questions in a little bit. All right, so some more questions for you guys to ponder. And if you want, there's some blank sheets there. You can write these questions down and start thinking about how you would answer them. So the first 3, what is my legacy? So as you're thinking about your life, what is my legacy? And then a follow-up question that could be, well, what do you want it to be if it's not quite the ideal that you're wanting? Next question, what is our family legacy? So as you think about your family, what is our family legacy? And here's a fun one. What does it mean to be for me, it would be Coonen. What does it mean to be a Coonen? Or my maiden name? What does it mean to be a Levine? If you bring these up at family gatherings, say Christmas dinner or Christmas New Year's celebration, go around the room and ask that question. Hear the answers. Might be kind of fun, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you know, you can make a difference if it wasn't what you wanted to hear, right? But starting those conversations just with questions like this. Now think about this. Can your estate plan create the legacy that you have earned? So where in your estate plan does it tell who you are, what you stand for, what your values are? Here's another one I hear a lot. How can I keep the money from harming my family? My answer to that really is making sure you're passing the meaning with the assets. So your stories, your values, your life lessons, mentoring them, preparing them. Another question, are you confident that your family is prepared? Now, there's a great quote I have here from a NBA coach, Pat Riley, if anyone knows him. Being ready isn't enough. You have to be prepared. Now, your kids, your grandkids may be ready for you to pass an inheritance. Eager, anxious might be other words. But are they prepared? And how can you prepare them? So what has to happen for my spouse or my family to be ready and prepared when I am gone? Now, I know this is a very difficult topic to think about, and most people just don't even want to think about that day, but I can tell you it happens, right? And it's so much smoother when you do prepare for it, and you do think about it, and you do know kind of what you envision for that next chapter. Yeah. Well, that is exactly your homework. So ready and prepared. In my book, Unprepared, Heirs at Risk, chapter 6 is all about readiness indicators and preparedness. How can you get them to where you want them to be, or you feel confident that they are ready for what's next? So that ready and prepared is really kind of on you to decide. How would you know that they are ready? So for example, so if we think of driver's ed, right? So we have a 15-year-old that is ready to drive, absolutely ready to drive, has been ready to drive since he was 12, right? But what do they need to go through? They need to go through preparation, right? The driver's ed coursework, whether it's at the high school or a course that they take online, I don't remember now how it is, but they need to know the rules and regulations and all of that kind of stuff, right? The book work. But they also do what? Practice, right? They have opportunity to get the experiences they need in order to know this works. I can do this. I have practice or experience. So when you think about what needs to happen for your spouse and family to be ready and prepared when you're gone, do they need to have maybe certain characteristics? Do they need to be humble, inquisitive, have a good decision-making process? Do they need to be able to balance a checkbook? Do they need to know where the checkbook is? For example, my father, when my mother was passed, had never written a check in 60 years, right? So what are those criteria in your mind that you would say, if they can do X, Y, Z, P, D, Q, they're going to be ready. And I'm going to feel confident that they are prepared. And that's a conversation. I mean, if anyone wants to have that conversation, please email me, call me. I'm happy to just walk you through kind of what that means and how to figure those things out. Now, here's a quote, another quote that I love. Wisdom from a mom. You can't prepare the road of life for your kids, but you can prepare your kids for the road of life, right? I think it was this gentleman here that said uncertainty of what's in the future, right? You don't know what's going to happen, but if you give them the skills they need to be resilient, to be able to manage those rough waters, you will be confident that it's ready. They're ready and prepared. All right, let me see where we are here. Okay, so it's check-in time. Holy cow, it's 5 minutes left. We're going to go fast. Check-in time. So that question that we had at the beginning, how many of you have completed your planning? Hands up if you have. Okay, you still feel to have. Great, great. All right. For those that didn't raise their hand, here's a few steps that you can take to achieve that confidence and get your planning in order. First, understand the purpose of your wealth, your family's wealth to you. And what is your purpose for your family? So it's a little bit of discovery, little assignment for you to think about. And documenting your stories will help. I mean, okay, I'm going to leave it there, sorry. Then share your story. Invite your children, your grandchildren, to listen to a story or two. Now, one of my mantras is invite them all and work with the willing. Don't be upset if not everyone wants to join the first time. Just do it. Make it a tradition. Do it at the family dinner table. Allow them to share too. That's the next one. Communicate about your values. Well, but make it a two-way street. Ask them questions about what they value. And it's funny because if you listen, you will likely hear the things that you've taught them, but maybe not in the exact way that you've taught them, but it will be there. And then create a family purpose statement together. So ask them what they believe your family stands for. What do you guys want to do in the future? What difference should we make as a family? All right, I have a couple things to help you get started. Cindy, just everyone one of these and one of these. So the first handout that I have for you is called the Person of Influence. And it's a guided discovery, if you will, guided questions that will help you create a story about someone that matters most to you, someone that was influential in your life. And it has follow-up questions to help you kind of dig deeper about that, the meaning behind and what you've learned. The second handout you have is called a Have I Completed My Planning checklist. So it's broken up into 3 different sections. One focused on legacy planning or heritage design, one focused on financial planning, and one focused on estate planning. Now, I do have to say, this is not meant to be advice or anything. Please work with your trusted advisors to figure out what's right for you. This is just a guideline. I am not a tax expert. I am not an estate planning attorney. Although I have my CFP, I don't practice anymore, but thank you. We have a few extra. Okay, great. So a few checklists there. Now, I want to show you something. Up here on the board, it says Coonen values, right? You see family time, generosity, outdoors, nature, friendships, animals, destination vacations, meaning travel and learning together. So in 2016, I had, my family just loves when I do this. I had come home from a work trip and said, hey, let's do this activity. So we got together and we just brainstormed, what matters most to us? What do we appreciate? What do we value? And that's the list we come up with. Now you'll notice Green Bay Packers aren't up there, right? Loyalty, passion, the things that really drive me for my personal values. But what we did is we came together and figured out combined values, family values that we stand for. This is what it's evolved into. Now, I am not an artist, my daughter is, but I took it upon myself to create this. But this has become our Coonen compass. Now, my husband and daughter are huge hunters. So for Miranda, she said, it needs to be a compass because that helps us come back to where we belong, come back home. So the Coonen compass is there. It doesn't look great, I'm not an artist, but we have the generosity, the nature, the animals, family time, and travel that matter most. And this sits on our mantle, just helping us always to be focused on what matters most. So questions, and then I have a challenge for you, and I have 2 minutes? No? Okay, go ahead. The immediate family was the Coonen compass, yes. And then I have another family shield from the Levine side, which is my family of origin, because they will be different. Yep, absolutely, great call. Yes.
I just have a comment. Something we started is including family with a board meeting. Earlier this year, we sat down with an attorney and reviewed our trust. We had a daughter sit in.
Nice.
We should have my financial advisor. We said it, and then later on, we're going to have the funeral plan.
Yep.
We're going to have her sit in on that plan. So
Now, do you only have one child?
we're upset.
Okay. So do they all get involved at some point?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, because you'll have one lead, right? One person, right? And then you'll share it with the entire family so they don't feel left out. Great, good. Yes, okay. Right. Yes. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. Great point. Yes. Encouraging I volunteer at assisted living facilities and do my legacy journaling classes because it is so important for them to just get stories down before it's too late. It's like a library burning down, right? When a person dies, because all of those stories go away and they can never be read. So encourage you, document, journal, absolutely. All right, challenge for you. In the next 72 hours, do one of those things or do something with a gem that you learned today. Why 72 hours? Because if you don't do it in those first 72 hours, you're never going to do it. It will be put on the back burner. So if it's this important to you, do one thing tomorrow that will make a difference and have a conversation. I know they're not easy to start sometimes, but if you look at some of those questions, what is our legacy? What does our family name stand for? Just kind of fun things to talk about around the dinner table, around the Christmas gathering. Just make it fun and start a conversation. But the important thing is to listen to what their answers are, right? You know your own answer. Listen to what their answers are. Yes. Well, are there things, positive things that you can pull from it because it made you who you are today? Okay. So we all go through crazy times, right? But what you want to think about is, what made me who I am today about that experience? Am I more resilient? Am I more choosy? Do I have a better decision-making process? What was it? Great question. Yes. Mhm. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So sharing gets easier. Is that what you're saying, Terry? Like, yeah, the insights gets easier. Good. Yeah. Okay. Good. Mhm. 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 I would probably phrase it as far as like, what would you like to do differently than we've done in the past? Even if it's just little holiday celebrations, what could we do differently next year that would make it even better? Or, what have we done in the past that hasn't been productive? How would you suggest to change it? One discussion I had with a family was about the family cottage in Canada. And I knew from pre-calls that the son had some very interesting ideas about what he saw as the vision, but dad was not listening, and it was actually still in grandma's name. So during this family alignment day, we had an open discussion that I brought up as a neutral facilitator, just to say, okay, one of the discussions we normally have is about like a family cottage. Do you guys have a family cottage? Yeah. Okay. So, and I just began that discussion, and the son was able to share and the dad listened. That next meeting that we had a year later, they had done 2 of the improvements that the son had suggested, and he was just elated. He was so happy. He's like, I was heard, and everyone loves it. But it sometimes just takes that opportunity to have those types of discussions and to have someone else ask the question, because these are different types of questions, right?
You learn a lot of stuff.
Yes.
That's not bad.
Yeah. 2 truths and a lie is another fun one that adds on. You know, you write 3 things down, 2 that are true, 1 is a lie, and then you have to, everyone picks which one isn't true. So yeah, there's a lot of fun getting the conversation started. Good. Well, I think my time is up, so thank you all very much.